Welcome to A Year in the Bible with Daily Grace. The Bible tells one big story of redemption, and we want to spend 5 minutes every day journeying through the Bible from start to finish and exploring how all of it points to Jesus. Hey, welcome to our last day in the book of Genesis on A Year in the Bible with Daily Grace. My name is Joanna Kimbrell, and it has been such an honor to be your host through the book of Genesis. Today, we are closing the book of Genesis with chapters 47 through 50. Just so you know, each book of the Bible will have a different host, and so tomorrow, my sweet friend Katie Davidson will start walking through the book of Exodus with you. Yesterday, we left off with Judah and Jacob's reunion, and in today's passage, the Pharaoh allows Joseph's family to settle in Goshen in the best part of the land. They were given food, land, everything that they could need. Now remember, there's a severe famine going on, and all the people were buying food from Joseph because he ran Pharaoh's household. But people were running out of money, so they bought food with their livestock, and then with their land, and themselves as servants of Pharaoh, so that Pharaoh owned everything except the priests and their land. So Israel settled in Goshen, and the text says that they were fruitful and multiplied greatly. The promise to make them a great nation is coming true. God fulfills his promises. Jacob lives 17 years in Goshen, but before he dies, he makes Joseph swear to bury him in Canaan. Jacob, like Abraham, is putting his faith in God to bring them to the promised land. When Jacob is about to die, he calls Joseph to him. He tells him that God has promised him an everlasting possession in the land of Canaan, which stands in contrast to the temporary possession Pharaoh gave them in Egypt. And then Jacob does something interesting. He formally adopts Joseph's 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, which means that Ephraim replaces Reuben as the firstborn and receives the birthright because Reuben slept with Bilhah. Throughout the Old Testament, the northern kingdom of Israel is often just called Ephraim, and this is where that comes from. So Jacob blesses Ephraim and Manasseh, and there are a lot of interesting connections to his own blessing from Isaac. He made sure that he had the right people so that he did not make the same mistake that he deceived Isaac into making. And then he blessed the younger one, Manasseh, as if he were older. The amazing thing about God's kingdom is that blessing is never based on race or seniority or position, but it depends on God who gives as he chooses. After blessing his newly adopted sons, Jacob blesses his biological sons. He says that Reuben has lost the honor of the birthright because he slept with his concubine. Simeon and Levi are violent and will be scattered. While the line of Simeon essentially would later dissolve, the tribe of Levi used their scattering for God's glory. Judah's blessing is very important. Jacob says that his brothers will praise him, and he does have preeminence because from his tribe comes a line of kings that lead to the promised offspring, King Jesus. And the rest of Judah's blessing points forward to the Messiah, the promised offspring who would come through Judah's tribe. The other sons receive various blessings, and Joseph's blessing is long and more detailed. Joseph is set apart for a special blessing after his brothers tried to set him apart for death. So all these sons became the 12 tribes of Israel, and Jacob was buried with Abraham and Isaac. Jacob died looking ahead to God's promises. He died in faith, and he went home. After Jacob died, Joseph's brothers were worried he would want to take revenge on them, and so they told him that before he died, Jacob asked Joseph to forgive them. Joseph's response is an amazing truth that characterizes much of what we have read in the book of Genesis. He says, "You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good." Isn't it amazing to think that every weapon of the enemy, God turns back against him? Isn't it a comfort to know that not only does he protect us from evil, but he actually uses it for our benefit? Time and time again in Genesis, God's people are both sinners and victims of sin, but God never stopped working. This truth is so beautifully displayed in the cross of Christ. Even the very death of Jesus is the thing that brought us life. What a blessing. Genesis ends with the death of Joseph and his request to be returned to Canaan to be buried with his fathers. He too trusted in the promises of God. The book of Genesis teaches us so much about God and his plan to redeem his people. We have seen that God is faithful even when we don't deserve it, and even when it seems impossible. And the story doesn't end here. Thank you so much for joining me as we walk through this incredible book together. Tomorrow we will begin Exodus, so be sure to check back in here.